So in this part of lecture, I'll be discussing GPCRs. GPCRs means G protein coupled receptors, and this G protein coupled receptor. So let's see the structure of the G protein coupled receptor. Now this is the outer membrane of the cell, and this is the inner membrane of the cell. And G protein coupled receptor, it has a 7 helical structure. Now this is the first helix, second helix, third helix, fourth helix, fifth helix, sixth helix, seventh helix. So likewise it is having a 7 helical structure. That's why it is called as 7 transmembrane receptor, and it is also called as, so this helix moving across the membrane like a snake, so that's why it is called as a serpentine receptor. Serpentine receptor. And this is also called as metabotropic receptor. Metabotropic receptor, right? So outer side of the outer end is also called as N terminus, and this is also called as carboxy terminus or C terminus. And this GPCR, which is associated with the this C terminus, which is associated with the one protein, this is the GTP, and this GTP is always associated with the alpha and beta and gamma subunits, and the major one is alpha subunit, right? And in this there is presence of the GTP protein, and this GTP is associated with the alpha subunit and beta subunit and gamma subunit. So whenever drug binds to this N terminus or here, whatever the binding site it has, so this drug whenever binds to this receptor, this GTP gets dissociated, or which gets detached each other. Now this GTP, after binding of the drug, it gets detached each other, and this GTP sometimes associated with the alpha, or this GTP sometimes associated with the beta or gamma subunit. Now this GTP, if it is alpha and associated with the alpha, it may be sometimes a stimulatory type. Stimulatory type means which increases the cyclic AMP levels, and it may be sometimes inhibitory type, that means which decreases the cyclic AMP levels, and sometimes Q type. Q means which increases the calcium levels, right? And this GTP may be associated with the beta or gamma, right? And this causes the activation of the potassium channels, and this also causes the inhibition of the calcium channels as well, right? And this GTP, alpha GTP, right? This GTP, which is associated with the alpha type and which is a stimulatory type, and this causes the activation of the adenylate cyclase pathway. Adenylate cyclase pathway, and if it is activating the adenylate cyclase pathway, and it takes up the ATP, and this open chain of ATP gets converted into the cyclic form of ATP. Now this cyclic form of ATP is known as cyclic AMP, and this cyclic AMP which further activates the protein kinase A means adenylate cyclase here. And kinases, so the function of kinases is always does the phosphorylation, which attaches the phosphate group from the organic source. Phosphorylases also enzymes are present, and those phosphorylases enzymes which transfers the phosphate group from the inorganic phosphate, right? So this is how the kinases and phosphorylase difference, right? So next, this kinases which causes the phosphorylation, and this gives the effect. It causes the phosphorylation of the protein, it gives the effect, right? This is called as phosphorylation. Clear? And so what is the cyclic AMP role of cyclic AMP? So what are the functions which being carried out with the cyclic AMP here? So this cyclic AMP This cyclic AMP which is raised in the smooth muscles, and if it is raised in the smooth muscles, what is the effect which is given in the smooth muscles? So if it is raised, cyclic AMP levels are raised in the smooth muscles, inhibition of the myosin light chain kinase, and it activates the myosin light chain phosphorylase, and now this gives the effect. Now this effect is called as relaxation effect, right? And this cyclic AMP is, on the other hand, it is also increased condition in case of cardiac muscle, and as well as a skeletal muscle. In case of skeletal muscles also, so there is a raises in the cyclic AMP. So what is the function which is being carried out in case of cardiac muscles and as well as skeletal muscles? So it activates or it phosphorylates the phosphorylates the calcium channels, right? It phosphorylates the calcium channels. So if it is phosphorylating the calcium channels, that means there is increases the calcium levels, and whenever this calcium is approached by the proteins, that gives the effect called contraction. So if you have not understand this concept, so do not remember this. Just if cyclic AMP rises in the smooth muscle, that gives a relaxation effect. If cyclic AMP raises levels in the skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles, that gives the effect called contraction. Clear? So how there is a one hormone, there is a glucagon. This glucagon is a hormone, and this is how this glucagon, which is increasing the blood glucose levels. This glucagon, which is activating the adenylate cyclase pathway, and which further activates the cyclic AMP levels, and this increased cyclic AMP levels, which increases the glycogenolysis, which increases the levels, or which increases the reaction, right? So which increases the catalysis reaction of the glycogen, that break downs the glycogen, right? This is the part of the glycogen breakage. So this is how the glucagon, which causes the breakage of the glycogen, and this liver glycogen, when only liver glycogen increases the blood glucose, not muscle glycogen increases the blood glucose. Okay, only liver glycogen which increases the glucose levels in the blood. So this is how which increases the blood glucose levels. Right, and on the other hand, there is a one ADH hormone. It is also called as antidiuretic hormone, and this is the antidiuretic hormone is also called as vasopressin. This vasopressin, how the vasopressin which is carried out its a function, right? So that means which increases the reabsorption of the water. How reabsorption is being happen in the collecting tubules of the nephron. So it activates the adenylate cyclase pathway again, and it further increases the cyclic AMP levels. After increasing of the cyclic AMP levels, so after raising of the cyclic AMP levels in the collecting tubules, and which inserts some pores, like some pores which is related to the aqua, that means water. So that pores is called as aqueous channels. This aqueous channels is known as aquaporins, and after inserting of the aquaporins, the water reabsorption is being happen after the aquaporins inserts into the collecting tubules. This is how the water absorption is happens. Water reabsorption is happens. There is one bacteria which secretes one toxin. This toxin is known as cholera toxin, that is secreted by the Vibrio cholera. And this cholera toxin, so it causing the diarrhea, right? So it is causing the diarrhea. So how this cholera toxin is causing the diarrhea? Let's see. So this chorotoxin, which activates the gangliosidic receptor. Now this gangliosidic receptor is called as GM1 gangliosidic receptor. GM1 gangliosidic receptor, and after activation of the GM1 gangliosidic receptor, and which further activates the adenylate cyclase pathway. After activation of the adenylate cyclase pathway, and this increases the cyclic AMP levels. After increasing of the cyclic AMP levels, and it further activates the cystic fibrosis transmembrane receptor. Now this is called as CFTR, cystic fibrosis transmembrane receptor, which promotes to excretion of the sodium as well as chloride ions, which increases secretion, whatever the excretion happens, which promotes the excretion of sodium and chloride ions. So if these ions being excreted, so there is decreases the mineral levels in the body. So this condition is called as, so this condition is defined as diarrhea. So this is the functions of cyclic AMP. And please, if you really like this video, please try to like it and share it and subscribe it if you like it for further more updates. So thank you for watching, and bye bye.